Hey crafties, welcome to this bonus episode. I am very excited to share this with the community, an interview with someone who I was very honored to have on the show, someone that I've been following on social media for a while now after I made the pleasant discovery that he plays Magic. Today I'm going to be talking with John Darnielle, founder and lead singer of the Mountain Goats, a very celebrated author of a number of books. And John's really a deep well, is often sought out to discuss a wide range of topics. And so I'm really excited. I had a chance to hone in with John specifically on Magic Arena, which is a passion that we both share. Now, John's time was limited on this interview, and we actually got cut short because there were a couple of interruptions and he had another call coming in. But I was very happy for the conversation that we had, and I hope you will enjoy it as much as I did. So without further ado, I am excited to welcome John Darnielle to the show. How are you doing today, John?
What's happening? I'm decent. Like I told you earlier, I'm kind of getting owned. I'm having a very busy day, so when you try and squeeze your games in between two things, it tends not to go well.
Yep, it sounds like you might be a best of one gamer.
Yeah, I try to be the thing is, I drafted yesterday and I won 4. Right?
Nice.
I was pretty stoked. I mean, I'm trying to get up to 7 in Premiere, but I did pull this. Get that beautiful alternate art Vega the Watcher.
Vega the Watcher. That
super
is gorgeous.
Beautiful card.
Yeah.
And the thing is, in a Foretell deck, that thing is brutal. Right, that thing is like going to give you a lot of card advantage. If you splashed green to have a lower scale Coatl in there, which is exactly what I want to do, I'm going to draw a lot of cards.
the dream draft deck, indeed.
The thing is, that's a dream that you want to not realize, because like if I splashed X color, it's like or maybe you just never see it. maybe you sit there with your snake in your hand the whole time waiting for that forest. So.
If you're Arjuna playing the arena draft, that's probably what's happening to you.
Yeah, most of my drafting, when I say I won 4 yesterday, my drafting on arena, I mean, well, not just even live. I have a gift for pulling the unplayable rare. Like the first time I drafted Eldraine, I pulled Happily Ever After.
Oh, you gotta love it.
Well, cool. I'll just play that in draft, then it'll be great.
Yeah. Tybalt's trickery gamer over here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So,
John, I'm super excited to get into the arena talk because, of course, that's why we're here. Before we get into all of that, though, I'm super curious about your history with Magic and like your general history with nerddom, because I'm sure that Magic is not your first rodeo when it comes to, fantastical stuff and gaming and all that kind of stuff. So I'd really like to hear a little bit about your history with gaming and geeky stuff.
So I got into science fiction and fantasy. I mean, I was reading C.S. Lewis when I was very small, right? My father and I got into C.S. Lewis together. And actually, you know what? It's funny. I have answered this question in an interview earlier today, but an important piece is missing. If you ever read my second book, Universal Harvester, third, I guess, I dedicated it to 3 teachers, people who really showed me the way. And one of them was a woman named Debbie Vansel, who was a 5th grade teacher, 5th and 6th grade in Claremont at Sycamore School. It would take a long time to explain how public schooling in Claremont was very different for a brief window of time. But it had to do with people who had graduated in early education in the late 60s and who were going to change the world through early childhood education by making it also about living your values. And there was this window. Conservatives saw this happening a little too late to stop it from doing some good, but then they started cracking down through local school districts. But she was in this window where after lunch, and I think I now recognize that part of what she was doing was, after I have lunch, I can't have the kids, I can't be supervising the kids immediately. I need a break. So she would read to us for an hour after lunch. We'd come in after lunch break. We're all keyed up kids. And then we'd sit down and she would sit in front of the class and read. And I forget what the first book she read, but at one point she read The Hobbit. And I mean, we loved it a lot. I especially. And then when it came time to read another book, we asked her to read Fellowship of the Ring. And she did that, right? I don't think we got into the Two Towers, but by that point, all of us had gone off. I mean, we learned how to write our names in Elven runes, not our personal names. We assumed character names, and I was Gollum, right? And I can still write Gollum in Elven runes because I wrote it everywhere. It was our whole thing, right? And from there, I started looking at the magazine of fantasy and science fiction at my mom's library where she worked. She had a big backlog of that and Analog and Isaac Asimov's science fiction magazine. And I was into dragon stuff. Now, Anne McCaffrey was very new in those days. I never did wind up reading her. But I always I didn't want that much of the hard science fiction. I wanted to know about it. I wanted to be learned as far as the field went. But my own area was sort of fantasy with a horror element. Inside of a couple of years, it became more horror, which was a much smaller niche at the time. It was so tiny. To get into horror, you had to shop at the right comic store and find the single horror zine that was printed that had wider distribution, which was called Whispers, right? And they were publishing like Ramsey Campbell and Dennis Etchison, Robert Aikman, Tanith Lee, a lot of these writers who were fantasy with a very dark edge to it. So that was my stuff. But that world led me to going to a science fiction convention when I was like 12, going to a Ren Fair once. That was very much not my scene, the Ren Fair, and the convention was a little weird because I did not have a desire for it to be the entirety of my life. I was too into music, right? And this is still true for me, that I don't really affiliate 100% with any identification. Like, my stuff is nerdy as hell, right? But I'm not a proper, I'm a rogue element in the crew, right? Because I'm also a musician dude, right? And it's like, that's a big part of my life there. And I'm also most of the literature that I read is highfalutin serious literature. I know I reject all genre boundaries, so I don't really respect any distinction between serious literature and popular literature or anything like that. But the stuff I like tends to be, confusing stuff, right? Stuff that you really have to slow down to read, and stuff that rewards second and third visitations, literature and translation a lot of the time. That's where I sort of landed, but I've stayed engaged with all the other stuff for the most part. I became a comics guy also, like around the same time. Very glad I got out of that before comics culture really became what it became. I mean, I know it's more than its most toxic elements. It is totally more than that. I know a bunch of great comics people, but I would be so bummed out to be in the sort of, having to constantly battle macho elements and stuff like that, that stuff. But that's where I was a huge Harlan Ellison fan when I was in 6th and 7th and 8th grade. I mean, I worshiped that guy because he was this image of the writer of the imagination as the most sacred place you could occupy. I feel very different about that these days. I actually think I think the reader is king, right? And it's like, to me, the reader is who does the magic. The writer is kind of the fool in folklore, right? Where the fool does a thing and tells a lot of real truths, but he does not do that because he's a genius. He does it because he can't help it. So, and that's me. It's like, I don't take a lot of credit for what I do. I have a thing that I do, and it seems to have some amazing and awesome effects out in the world. And I'll claim credit for having honed my craft. Like, I don't think anybody really versifies to the extent that I do in terms of writing lines that actually scan as poetry, that scan as formal verse. I'm real good at that, and I take a lot of credit for that. And I can hit a certain emotional range, but the power rests in the hand of the listener and the reader. That's where I landed. And all that is very deep theoretical talk that usually doesn't enter into genre fiction talk. Genre fiction is more at the level of the story, right? So
I was really interested to learn that in your novel Wolf in White Van,
yeah,
you came up with this game played over mail, right? It was one of these letter games that were popular in the previous era.
Yes.
Did you have experience in that kind of gaming?
No.
Okay.
So I actually, what I love about the process of that is, like, when I had my story to tell, the guy was Sean was a person with a horrible deformation in my first chapter. And then the way that I write, because I want all my stories to read as though they took place in the world we live in, right? That's a big part of, well, for now anyway, I might go elsewhere in the future, but that's always been my way, right? So the first question I ask about my characters is, what does he do for a living? Right? That's always how do you get money? How are you paying your rent? Because for most of us, at least 8 hours a day are spent worrying about that, right? Working on that. In most fiction, a person goes to the office and comes back, but unless the book takes place in the office, we don't see a third of their lives, and we don't see the third they're sleeping. So we're only getting a sliver of who they actually are, right? So I said, well, if he's terribly deformed, I'll have to do something like marketing from home. And I thought, maybe since he already was into science fiction stuff, I got this idea for a play-by-mail game. It was my own idea, but then I wound up asking much later after I'd been writing it. It was like not quite published yet, I think, but I was able to ask Jason Morningstar, who I play games with, like, was this a real thing? He said, no, I think there were people doing that. And he said there was a company called Flying Buffalo that I think still exists, and their website was still up until recently, but I tried to sign up after the book was publishing and it bounced. But I mean, the internet obviously changes everything for that level, but mail, old technology has always been a huge abiding concern of mine, and the way we form attachment to technologies that age out. And this happens to everybody. I guarantee you, as giant as Twitch now, there's going to come an age where people remember Twitch. Remember when we did that? Remember before whatever comes next? Like, there's always a whatever comes next. And then your attachment to technology, then you learn how much a part of you it was. And mail, god damn, in the earlier days of fandom, the mail was, you found out about a zine that was a little more niche than the ones you could buy on the newsstand. You saw it advertised in the back of the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, and you gambled $2 and sent it off for it, right? And that would open a door to other people in other parts of the world or country doing something in your area. And it was an amazing point of contact. And I thought, well, that would be interesting for my guy, because that's kind of going to be the only people he hangs out with.
Man, I love it. This point that you make about the technology, I think, is so relevant, especially to right now, because with us living in the pandemic, it's kind of putting into perspective the way that we rely on various forms of communication and various forms of technology in order to continue to pursue our interests and to stay in touch with the people that we want to stay in touch with. And earlier you were showing me your battle station where you set up to play.
No, I'm right there now. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Here's some of my friends here's a Myosaur, and then here's my little wizard guy that I found at a shop in Alabama, and he sits atop my hard drive over here. And then and there's 3 hockey players that they helped me: Eric Lindros and Paul Correa and Peter Forsberg. And Hello Kitty sits amidst them near a game science die. I don't know if you know game science, but
oh yeah,
only dice that actually give you a truly random roll. And there's a kaiju here. I got all my dudes.
I love it. So I think that you're kind of living into the fact that as someone who wanted to play Magic, you actually, it sounds like you converted to playing Arena during the pandemic because of availability challenges, right?
I have Catholic tendencies, which means I like rules and limitations, right, a lot. And I mean, then I like to break them because it's what they're about. But one thing that was really frustrating me at pre-releases that I was getting attitude about is, like, I was not following previews online or anything. I like to see the cards for the first time at the pre-release. Now, that's for foolish reasons. That's just because the first time I did it, that's how it was, right? But then I got really attached to that. And it was really frustrating that everybody knew the meta by the time they hit the pre-release at midnight. I'd be like, no, we should all be learning this together. That would be so cool, right? Well, that's not really possible. But I started to develop a real, Arena is ruining it. It's like, if it wasn't for Arena, these people, and I still, to some extent, in good deck building, if your card's good enough to play it 4 times, right? That's until you're getting to super advanced modern decks where you're impossibly interactive and delving and stuff, But generally speaking, in basic deck building, if a card's worth playing, it's worth having 4 of them in your deck. But in Arena, it gets to such an aggressive version of the meta. Like, when somebody is playing a deck, when I see you splash Hallowed Priest, I bet I can name every other card in your deck, right? And I'm not interested in playing against that deck now. I don't care if I can beat it or not. It's like, if there's no surprises in your deck, that's like, it's as if we've sat down and said, okay, we're going to roll 2 6-sided dice 20 times a piece, and I'm going to bet that I roll 5 more times than you roll 9. It's like, well, we already know what the odds are on that. We can calculate those odds, right? Now, they won't be for certain because there is an element of chance, and it's true in Magic too, but the absolute rigor of the meta on Arena is frustrating to me. And in proper, in proper local game store Magic, the meta has a little less of an advantage, right? The meta sort of runs up against some limitations, which is where it gets into sort of talks about class and money, where people play proxies and then other people hate on playing proxies. I don't want to play against a proxy, but at the same time, I don't want to tell somebody they have to spend $200 on a card, if they have a deck idea. if that deck idea is somebody else's deck idea, that's when the proxy kind of offends me. It's like, I mean, you have no personal attachment to this deck. You just want the proxy to build a very powerful deck. So you want to play a different game than I play. Whereas I want my game is expressive to some extent of my creativity, right? I want to make a deck that does something cool. I want to find some interaction that's janky, right? So something that's a little weird,
That's basically how I came to know you, as I feel like you're the ultimate competitive jank brewer, right?
You can't prove it by my play today and last night, but yes, theoretically, I've made Mythic 5 months in a row, so maybe.
Making Mythic 5 months in a row with your own brews, with specifically janky brews, I think is quite the achievement.
Well, it may speak to the fact that I just play too much.
But you do actually have to win games to get that, right?
Yeah. No, I do, and I'm surprised sometimes. And the thing is, I know that my jank builds are actually, and what they wind up being is like, okay, this is 1/3 dimmer rogues and 2/3 control, right? That's all I'm doing is, a real proper thinker like LSV or somebody could look at that and go, well, here's what your deck is. It's these two decks, and the reason your deck is losing a lot is because it can't decide what it wants to be. And if you'd build it around this, it would win more. But you got to do what I do. It is fun to be suddenly playing. I mean, my decks give you options. You can resort to a control strategy. The one deck I played and the one I made it with last month, the Ephemia deck, that's pretty. You are going to load it up with enchantments. You have to do that, right? You have to have a lot of enchantments. You have to throw out your Heartless Act and use Myra's Grasp instead. And that is a swinging deck. But that one looked probably more like whatever the Ephemia build is supposed to be. But I'm always trying to avoid that and do something that is my own.
So has that always been your approach to Magic, or is it kind of like a middle finger to the Arena kind of deterministic way of being?
It's always been my approach, only insofar as I didn't realize there was an actual meta that people talk about. And I still don't know that there is. I mean, I was talking about how the reader has as much power as the writer. This is true in Magic. I know the people at Wizards, right? And I have been to the offices, and I don't think that they're sitting down and going, here's a meta build. This is it. Now, they do build specific decks, right? They say, here's a deck. This is that. But most of these meta builds we see are not, in fact, the Elspeth deck or something. There's something else where players, I think, see things that the designers maybe do see, but I think the designers are thinking in terms of a much bigger world of possibilities instead of the deck, right? I can't prove that, but I think that's what's true. Whereas the players see the new set of cards, and these are all like giant brain people who, if I play against them, I will lose in 3 turns. I don't care what they're playing, But these are the guys who go, nope, okay, I'm looking at these cards, and I'm seeing that your sack deck looks like this. And I mean, they see it all. You're probably one of them. So, whereas I look at it and I go, oh man, really? So that thing never dies, huh? I'll be damned. I fell in love the first time I saw Sir Conrad. I was like, cool, gone. Yeah. Kill my stuff. Kill it dead. Put it in the graveyard.
And John, you're not the first to go down the Sir Conrad road either. Sir Conrad has led many a mage.
He's so great, and he is especially great when you have Graveyard Return. The thing that's great about him as a design is that they made him 2 black. So if you are going to try and build him, Graveyard Return, there's a lot of green Graveyard Return. Right? There's a lot of stuff in green that helps you get stuff into the graveyard. The Acolyte of Affliction, those guys, right? But with Sir Conrad, if you're going to splash green, well, once you have, ideally, you want him out on your 5th turn. You do not want to wait longer with Sir Conrad for him to start going to work. And so he's encouraging mono black. I think mono decks in the past couple sets are actually much more powerful than they were at Eldraine, right? Whereas Eldraine, I think, was like challenging you to pay a little bit of a penalty by going mono. If you want to play Garrick, he's green-black, right? So Garrick and Conrad, go for it if you want, but Conrad is challenging you to play mono, I think. And that was more of a challenge then than it is at present. Right? At present, I think my monitor just turned on, and now you're hearing the Arena theme.
I know. I was like, I think I recognize that music.
We could get to my preferences and see if I can. Where are those at? Audio. There we go. We'll turn the music down. But yeah, so that's my sort of thing is like when I see something that looks like it speaks to. I mean, I think there's that famous article about Timmy's, Spikes, and Johnny's, right? Where I think the Johnnies are the ones that that want to do cool stuff, right? That like, and that don't care so much about big cards, right?
Would you describe yourself as a Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a Johnny leaning Timmy, but I happen to rest in Spike territory if I go Mythic. But I'm certainly not a Spike. I don't enjoy, like, if I'm enjoying a game where I just whip you, I don't feel great about myself. I want to have fun playing Magic. I had a friend who's a really great guy who drafted a really good deck early in Eldraine, and he just was crushing the draft people. And one guy got really salty with him. And my friend is one of the nicest people I know. He said, well, at least we had a good time playing Magic. The guy was really salty. He goes, well, I didn't. I just sat here and you beat me. And that's how I feel if I'm the guy in the dishing out the beating chair. And it happens. When I was playing some Dimmer Rogues last month, a lot of those decks, if they get out ahead,
that's just zero-sum fun.
It is.
Deck. Yeah.
And that's the thing. I don't want to be the only person having fun at the table. I really don't. I come from playing tabletop, and tabletop, if everybody's not having fun, it's not fun. And I have long spiels about this in video games, because there's a moment at which video games, and that moment is Mortal Kombat, there's a moment at which video games become really unfun because the guy comes up and drops a quarter in the machine to play doubles with you, doesn't ask whether you want to play doubles, just walks up, right, and then crushes you because he's memorized all of the things. They're like, I didn't come here to get crushed. I came here to play and have fun. And I'm happy to play doubles with you, but not if you're, I didn't show up at the golf course to play against Tiger. It's like, I don't want to. It's not fun for me. I'm not going to learn anything from it, So, and that's I never want to be the guy in the, hey, now you're playing me, you get to lose, right? That's not me at all. It's like, I want us to both be having fun. And that's why an interactive deck is fun. I love it. If I'm countering spells and they're getting countered, that's fun for me. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of what people like about Magic, honestly, is the interaction. And I think it is so sad that you have this beautiful large pool of cards, right? And they each one has this incredible love put into them by the designer. And then, and then along comes the meta, and it basically just cuts out this huge, just all of you in the paper shredder.
No, you and I are on the exact same page about that. I do think the designers are seeing. I mean, when I say, I'm sure they see those meta decks. I'm sure they also go, well, you know what else would be fun? Because I've played at the offices, and those people are playing for fun. Because fun should be the first thing. I know it's competitive. I know we invest money in the cards, and I bought a bunch of gems in the last month on Arena. Obviously I want to win games. But it's not more important to me than playing a game that is fun, because I'm spending a lot of time into it. And that time for me is the reward I will get is the growth you experience by having fun, even with strangers. And that's what can be great about the emotes, is if you're using the emotes, like honestly, it's really fun to say nice when somebody plays a card that you didn't see coming, And that's one thing I really dislike is people who say good game right out of the gate, right? It's like, oh, cool, Mr. Macho Dude. And that's when if you're a dude, an average dude, then you natively just respond, oh, word? Oh, where do you see this? And that's not a healthy place to be.
Let me show you my Hushbringer, dude.
Exactly. It's like, oh, good luck with your, I'm sorry you didn't get to put a one counter on that, did you? No, because Hushbringer, yeah, there's 3 more where she came from.
So let's talk a little bit about, I'd love to hear a little bit about just your methodology for Jank Brewing. Because I think that there's a difference between someone who just sits down and just throws together a cards that I own deck.
Yeah. As
opposed to some folks out there who have perfected the art of Jank Brewing.
Yeah, I'm not there because I am too emotional a player, I think.
But I feel like you've definitely time and time again you've been able to go the distance with your Jank brews. So I'd love to hear just a little bit about your process. How do you start your brews? What is it about the card pool that stands out to you, and then how do you build around that?
So I will confess, and this is a guilty confession, that it happens in play. Somebody beats me with something that I resent, right? That comes at me too fast, that beats some deck I was enjoying, right? That beats a deck that I just won 3 with, and then you come along and you crush me with usually, and it'll be with usually I'm playing against mechanics that I don't like. Like I'm not crazy about mutate, but I really hate landfall, right? Landfall to me, that's the one I become sort of your standard internet Magic player about it. No, you should not be rewarded for playing lands. It's the most basic thing in the entire game. So you should not get rewarded for playing a land. And then in all these landfall decks, it's like, oh, Fabled Passage. Oh, you're going to crack that. Now you're going to play Cultivate, right? You're going to do all these things to get more lands to come out. And I'm of the opinion, like, you didn't deserve a cookie for playing that first land in the first place. Like, it's like landfall drives me nuts, and I don't like having to deal with it. And you can't stop it. I can't I can't enchant your stuff in a way to take. Well, yes, I can actually. Yes, I can. So a deck that I built last night that I'm looking at now, that it only won a couple games, but it served its purpose of punishing people for playing cards that I don't like, right? And a lot of my decks are like that. So it's called Blue Anger, right?
Okay, I like it already.
24 snow-covered islands that are there literally for only one other snow permanent. And that snow permanent is who? Can you guess? It's a 1-drop.
Is it the spirit? The pumpable snow spirit. Yep. That's
that is a brutal card.
Yep.
That card's a game ender. I mean, it's like
Ascendant Spirit, I think is what it's called.
Ascendant Spirit. Yep. Pay 2 snow to turn it into 2/3 warrior. Pay 3 to turn it into a 4/4 angel. Pay 4 to put 2 1/1 counters on it, and then you draw a card every time it hits a player. At that point, it's either incredibly effective removal or card draw, and it came out for 1. Right. So all my lands are snow covered islands. Then I have 2 Essence Scatters, 4 Facet Readers. That's a wizard. It's a 2-drop that I can pay 1 and tap it to draw and discard. All I'm trying to do is find my stuff. I got 4 Frogifies. It's an aura. Auras aren't the strongest things. I'm not going to get paid back for it for anything. But what Frogify does do is it shuts down your mutate, right? And that's what I was doing, was responding to some hellish Dreamtail Heron deck that was continually bouncing my stuff. I was like, okay, show me your Heron again. Come at me with that again. Then I got 2 Negates. Then I got 4 Caliphaes, which is too many Caliphaes. Right? So, but Caliphate taxes. And the first deck I went to Mythic with before God Pharaoh's Statue went out of rotation was a heavy tax deck that I learned from Itai Ben Sassone, and I are casual friends, and he for a competitive player who played a Death and Taxes deck. And I sort of fell in love with that strategy of like, oh, I'm just going to stop you from casting your stuff, and my stuff isn't even going to be especially strong, but you just can't do it, right? And God Pharaoh's Statue dings you for 1 and prevents you from casting your spells. I had a bunch of tax cards out there, miserable deck. So Caliphate, you can't come at her unless you spend an extra mana. Then I have 2 Cancels, 4 Didn't Say Pleases, 4 Cherix the Raging Isles. Right?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
And 4 Sir Eleonora, right? And that's it. I went 2 Into the Story. And all those Into the Stories and Facet Readers, all they're there is to try and get me to Cherix because I'm playing lands. I have cheaper spells. I don't have any land ramp, so it's still going to take me a while to get Cherix big enough. But once he's out there, and Cherix is like such a house of a card that if you can't exile him, you're out of luck. So
yeah, big butts there. I like big butts, and I cannot lie.
I love. Oh yeah, are you a High Alert player? Do you miss High Alert?
Oh man, it was one of the first things I did when that set was it Zendikar Rising, when that actually was released on Arena. I put together a historic deck. And it was the High Alert. It was playing the
Turtles.
05 Turtles and all that, and that deck is like, you get whooped 65% of the time, and then the rest you're just crushing people on turn 4, right?
Yeah, so, no, High Alert is absolutely. You're playing crabs. You're playing that. People see the Wish Coin crab and go, "Why is he playing this?" It's like because he's going to hit you for 5 in 3 turns.
Yeah, you start to recognize it, right? You're like, oh, this person's only played walls for the first 2. Okay, I know what's coming, right? I know what's coming.
That was one of the first decks that I tried to build myself, was a Wall of Lost Thoughts deck. It was like, because I just love the name. I fall in love with the names of cards. I think these designers have such beautiful imaginations. Wall of Lost Thoughts is an incredible card name. Just gorgeous, and making a wall deck takes real dedication.
It sure does, man. It sure does. But I love that you took us through like your methodology for putting together one of these decks, right? I think of this as like, this is revenge magic is what it is.
That deck is trash. I mean, it's like that deck does not really work very well. Whereas like, the other thing I do is like, I get tribal. I go, man, I like this dog. I really like tribal decks. So I built a deck called Good Dogs, right? And Good Dogs is exactly what you think it is. It's Selfless Saber, the Hellhound, Pack Leader, Alpine Houndmaster, Maul of the Skyclaves, because one of my things in all these decks is I have to make them fly, right? I have to make them fly or they're just dogs, right? So, but that's a fun ferocity of the wilds, which I think I overvalue. It seldom does me as much good as I want to because of the +0 on the other side of the 1. But rambunctious mutt, on the other hand,
there you go.
Artifact and enchantment removal is so huge in the current meta right now. You really need something that takes care of both of those. And as soon as he comes in, if I could only build a deck that would bounce Rambunctious Muck back to my hand and let him destroy multiple enchantments, but in a red-white deck, you're probably not doing a lot of bouncing.
You got to get that Nico Aris going.
I get that.
That's what you got to do.
Yeah, I get that. But the thing is, like, I like Baron. One of my Mythic decks was a Baron deck.
Yeah, Baron.
That guy rules.
Yep. So the regular co-host of this podcast and I, we actually were playing in the M21 pre-release, and we just randomly got matched up against each other. And I was playing Shrines. So
yeah, you're my enemy, man. Those Shrines.
Oh, man.
Those are...
they're so bad until they're so good. And then...
Yeah.
And meanwhile, he was playing a deck, and the whole thing was Yorion, Baron, Nyambi, Brazen Borrower. And it was just like, just anything that hit the board was just back to your hand, back to my hand. You know, at the end of the game, he was just looping 2 ECDs every single turn.
Man.
So,
there's an effect I don't think they've ever done, because you can destroy enchantments, but in the fictive world of actual enchantment, we have a lot of cases of wizards losing their power, right? That's sort of a classic fantasy story. Is like the magic doesn't work here, right? In this plane, my magic is nothing, right? And I would love something that was similar to Frogify on enchantments. You know, it's like target permanent. You know, I mean, isn't there something that just turns target permanent into a 1/1 something? I mean, I think in Modern there's probably a bunch of cards like this, but I would love to be able to make enchantments to make them impotent, right? So.
Right. Yeah, it's Imprisoned in the Moon, I think, was a cool one that just turns anything into a land. You know?
Yeah. That's great. Right. So it doesn't make it worthless. It just says, or you know, I mean, that's what what's his name did. Planeswalker, who got banned. That'll make a nice elk, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Just lovely creature, makes a good elk.
Yep, nice 3/3 you got over there. Yeah,
that card was so terrifying and awful.
Yes, all of us who lived during the time of Oko can remember.
Because he was adorable. His blue-green cards seldom look or feel aggressive. You know, they feel like they're having fun with you. Even the Sharkdo Crab is like, hey, I'm a big old Sharkdo Crab and I'm going to hurt you. And so,
yeah, it's so innocuous until it's suddenly just running rampant over every format in Magic.
Yeah, Simic was really fun in those days. I'm not sure that it's really quite where it was, but Simic, I mean, I can't actually build a working Simic deck. My Simic decks always die to removal pretty quickly, but my friend Clinton, who I play with, will build these Simic decks that are just intensely interactive with Sharkdo Crab, and because there's another big blue-green card in that set that like these things just continually put counters on each other. Very, very ugly cards.
Well, what I love that you're highlighting here is that there are layers to the meta, right? So you have like these really spiky people who keep coming up against, you know, the mono white aggro and Naya and, you know, all of these kind of really, really intense decks. But then there are these whole other universes where you've got John playing his funky mono blue deck against his friend's funky Simic Mutate deck or whatever.
Yeah.
And this is a whole other plane, as it were, right? We planeswalk to a different part of the Magic universe, and people are using different magic over here.
Well, that's the beauty of the game, and that's where, like, I don't have idols, you know. But when I think about I was gonna say Rosewater, but no, the guy who designed it,
Richard Garfield,
right? The vision of the game mechanic is so vast that it allows you to play the game for a million different reasons. Not a million, but, you know, many different reasons, many different ways of playing, not just in terms of, you know, whether you're playing Brawl or Standard, but within Standard, within any format, you could be expressing your desire to play in so many ways through these cards, and that it's a robust enough system to see 20 years of, like, you know, well, here's something else you can do, and that the players have so much to do with determining that. And that's really the you know, it's corny to say, but it's the magic of the game, is like there are so many ways to enjoy playing it. You know, it's like, and that's where I miss paper Magic the most, is like if you are at draft and you sit down with somebody, it's both your third game, and how you doing? It's like, oh God, I'm not, I happened to win the last one, but this deck is bad. I didn't pull anything. Oh, me too, right? And you sit there and play your garbage against each other and have a lot of fun watching how they work. It's like, and that's something people don't do on Arena much. It's like, it's just come to the table with trash to see what happens, and that can be a lot of fun.
So my interview with John ended shortly after this. He was having a busy day and had to move on to his next appointment. But I just wanted to say thank you once again, John, for having this conversation about Arena. It was really fantastic to get into your competitive, casual Jank mindset, and wishing you the best of luck for hitting Mythic with your janky brews moving forward. John Darnielle, of course, you won't have trouble finding him on the internet. You can go listen to the Mountain Goats. You can check out his collection of written works. And if you're on Twitter, I would really recommend following him on Twitter. His handle is mountain_goats. And I really enjoy following him. He does post quite often about Magic, in addition to a lot of other interesting topics that he follows. If you're lucky, you might even catch one of his extemporaneous songs about hitting Mythic with his various janky decks. Alright, that's all I have for you today. Catch you next time, crafties.